My guest, Shenee Alexa Booth, has a background both in healing arts and in permaculture, but at the foundation of her teachings is transformational breath work. And she uses that combination with complementary modalities to create a unique and dynamic experience for her clients and people that take classes with her. Shenee encourages folks to be aware of their physical, mental, and emotional states, plus their environment and how they relate to their environment and how their environment affects them, as well as the quality of their breath. So, welcome, Shenee.
Thank you, Michelle. Happy to be
So,
here today.
yay! So, you're going to share self-centering with breath. So, tell me a little bit about what that means to you. What do you consider self-centering with breath?
Mm. Well, I find that, throughout the day, we are experiencing a great range of things happening to us from our environment. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yet, we all want to be responding to our environment from this place of the self, the center. Um, And that's not always the case. So, part of what I'm doing is allowing people to get a more deeper awareness of the breath that is a constant. It's flowing with us always. So it's always there for us to pull on for a tool to recenter, to reset, um, and then affect how you're responding to your environment.
Gotcha. So, like, we're going throughout our day and we're just kind of responding to things. So, you're saying that the breath will help us kind of regroup within ourselves so that we can respond a little more in line with how we want to be.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oftentimes I feel like eh, we're kind of like automatically reacting without
Yeah.
being grounded first and making a decision about how we want to respond. And those reactive patterns were sometimes put into place far beyond in an age that we were even old enough to be consciously choosing what set of responses that we want um,
Mm,
in the subconscious. So
yeah. Yeah. So, like, when we're talking about, self-centering and conscious breath, like, sounds like that'll help pretty much anyone. Is there specific people that this helps or who can benefit from it?
absolutely everyone. Absolutely everyone that can breathe has a tool residing in them always that's accessible to us. And one of the amazing things about that is that the breath is free. It doesn't
Mm,
cost us anything. You don't need to be in a certain place or be at a certain time in order to access the breath. It can be done no matter where you are, no matter what your health is or your personal mobility is.
mm,
It's something that everyone has access to, which is really why it's one of my favorite modalities to offer individuals. I feel like we are in, particularly our society, has really taught us to be seeking something outside of us and always
yeah.
grabbing for some tool or some medicine that is outside of our external body. And
Hmm.
the breath, it's like we all are breathing and we all have that within us. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's absolutely accessible. So, um, how does the breath like help us be centered? Like, how does that bring us from out there to, what does that do for us?
sure. Well, we are, the way we are breathing is really making us feel the way that we're feeling at any given time, whether we're conscious of it or not. So, for example, a lot of individuals are going through their day with maybe a short, shallow chest breathing. which can actually induce states of stress and overwhelm.
Hmm.
The way
Interesting.
we breathe affects our hormone production and the chemical balance in the brain and so on. So many of us aren't realizing that if we're feeling a certain way and it's a way that maybe we're not desiring to feel, all we really have to do is shift the pace or the rhythm or the capacity of the breath, and that will help shift the way we feel. As
Oh,
breath workers, we like to say that breath mirrors life. So if you're breathing with a short, shallow, constricted pattern, life tends to show up in a short, shallow, constricted type of way with a lot more tension. Um,
wow.
I'm sure we can all relate to the sensation of feeling a strong emotion or maybe a trauma that's happening to you. And we feel it in our gut, right? It's almost like a
Hmm.
punch in the gut. Um, and as this happens over and over again through our life, we actually get muscular tension in the abdomen, which, where the diaphragm connects to the lower ribs. And that muscular tension can then change the way that our natural, everyday, kind of unconscious breath is occurring. So, uh,
Interesting. Yeah.
these conscious breathing practices that I ask my clients to practice, we are directing the breath lower into the abdomen, releasing some of that tension and stuckness that has occurred from how we physically react to normal everyday environmental stresses, expanding the breath and again bringing it lower into the abdomen, which regulates your hormones and actually produces an immediate calming effect on the brain and the body.
I think that there's a lot of people out there, perhaps most people out there, that aren't even aware of their breath, like how, if it's shallow, if it's deep, what, and if it is shallow, like, could it go deeper? Like, how do you bring awareness to that for people, like, right now, to see how they're breathing and, you know, how that affects them?
Sure. Um, One thing I like to ask individuals is to just sit in awareness without really trying to change anything right off the bat and just noticing how your breath flows and where you feel it the most,
Mm.
right? So you're breathing through either your nostrils or your lips. And so some individuals will feel the breath enter and exit across the lips. Some individuals are going to notice it in the nostrils. Breathing through the mouth and the nose gives different effects. Um,
Okay.
Also, just noticing where in the body you feel yourself filling or emptying. So, some individuals are only going to feel their chest rising and falling. Other individuals are going to be aware that their lungs are expanding so deeply, the diaphragm's moving down, they feel their navel rise and fall. Other
Mm.
parts of the body that aren't maybe as obvious are the side body. When you're breathing, if you're using a full expanded breath, you would feel the space under the armpits expand, the space between the shoulder blades, and even in the lower back. If you were like
Really?
laying on a yoga mat or something and you were breathing deeply, you would feel a lot of space being created in the body. I like to ask people to imagine how an infant child breathes. It's like you can almost see their whole body rising and falling.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of the first step, I think, is just sitting, even if it's just for a few moments and noticing where your breath currently is. And then if you do choose to have a conscious breathing practice or go to a class, or maybe you even feel some high emotion, you have a difficult day, check in then and see how is my breathing changed in this moment
Hmm.
and just kind of have those check-ins. Maybe it's once a day, twice a day, once a week, just starting to check in to notice how you're breathing in different circumstances.
That's great to bring that process into a little self-awareness, especially if it does have that impact on our mental and emotional well-being. I mean, we can draw the ties to, like, I would assume, if we can take deep, full breaths, that we have some physiological benefits from that too. Um, could you like maybe put a fine point on some of the benefits of conscious breathing?
Sure, absolutely.
I know you said like it helps the hormones and stuff like that.
Mhm. Um, yeah, there's some kind of statistic that I love to say that's like, and I may not state it precisely right, but it's pretty intense. It's like our brain, I think, takes up 3% of our body's mass, and it
Mm.
needs like 75% of our body's oxygen to function properly.
Wow.
Just astounding, right?
Yeah.
So for myself, I know when I got into conscious breathing, I went through a lot of cognitive change. I felt like I could literally feel my left and right hemispheres balancing in regards to the activities I was getting into, maybe some sports or something like that, just noticing how my body would move. Um,
Mhm.
Memory was a huge one for me. I didn't necessarily suffer from a decreased memory that I knew of.
Mhm.
But when I started getting into a lot of breath work, I realized how heightened and focused my ability to remember both short and long term was enhanced.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Oxygen also is one of the biggest players in aiding our digestion.
Mm.
So again, we're breathing with the lungs and the chest, but we're breathing so fully that it's pushing this diaphragm muscle. People don't realize the diaphragm muscle actually moves this direction. So it's connected to the lower ribs here. And when you fill the lungs, the diaphragm then moves down. And that's what makes
Okay.
the stomach rise and fall, right?
Okay.
So that pumping, that squeezing, it's really massaging all of our internal organs, and it is one of the biggest regulators in our metabolism. So turning our
Wow.
energy.
That's just like all of those points are just so powerful individually, but when you bring them collectively, like it really seems like breath work can actually be transformational for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that it's affecting everything, right? So you're literally breathing oxygen into all of your cells, which in turns affects all of your glands and all of your organs. So really, it's like all of your internal systems start communicating with one another. And that's really what I think returns the body back to your natural state of self healing, which is really harmony, balance, unlike a lot of the ways we treat symptoms, right?
Yeah.
We kind of isolate a symptom and we're like, how can we treat this one thing that's happening, where breath really affects everything overall? And that's something I see a lot in my clients. They'll come to me and they'll have one particular issue, and maybe it's emotional, right? Maybe it's
Mhm.
I'm feeling anger a lot, or when I feel anger, it's uncontrollable. And we'll start to dive into the anger, and then mysteriously, some pain goes away in their body, maybe that they've been
Oh,
for a long time. Or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe someone comes and they're like, I just have headaches all the time. I can't figure this out. And we start doing, some kind of breath that I think might be relieving to the tension around the brain or the eyes or the jaw. And then all this emotional baggage starts to pour out. So it's very integrative in that
yeah.
you really begin to tell how all these things are connected, the physical, mental, emotional, so on.
It sounds like breath is the bridge between those things.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really believe so.
Interesting. I've noticed since the beginning of this conversation, my breath was really shallow at the beginning, and now it's like more in my abdomen. I'm
Nice.
working that solar plexus a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting how like I didn't even consciously make that change. I just noticed, but then once I noticed, my body was like, "Oh, okay, girl, we're gonna regulate this a little bit."
Yeah, and we want to make it more complicated than it is. But just you're in this conversation about breath and your breath changes. It's like
Hmm.
that simple, really.
That's so awesome. So, when we talk about, the externals, like the emotional, the physical, the environmental factors, like what kind of effect do those have on our breath?
Um, well, I mentioned a little bit earlier about the way we respond in the body
Hmm.
to things that are happening around us, right? So one thing I always resonate with is that feeling of getting punched in the gut. Um,
Yeah.
but it really a common one is holding the breath, right? So we get like maybe we're about to take a test or have an interview or something that's causing us stress, and we literally start to hold the breath. And the breath is our life force. Like it's literally what's keeping all of our other functions functioning, and it's
Right.
always flowing um, until maybe we have a stress reaction and we hold it.
That
Another thing,
seems like a freeze response, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, Another thing that we tend to do is we'll start like blowing, like specifically when we're mad or we're frustrated, the breath pattern starts to be like, right? And you're blowing out, which is interesting because as a breath worker, we like to use the breath as metaphors a lot. And then the exhale is how we relate to negativity and things we don't want in our life.
Hmm.
So the blowing is actually like a forceful pushing it away instead of just being with it. Um,
Okay. All
so
right.
that's interesting.
Yeah. And and environmentally speaking, like when we take a look at, whether we feel centered or not, and our emotional and physical well-being, like environmentally speaking, how does that affect our day to day, and how can breath help with that?
Sure. I think just our general state of how relaxed we feel,
Okay.
or maybe how much clarity we have in our mind. If you hold a morning practice and you enter your day with a clear mind, your day is going to go a lot differently
Yeah.
than if you are kind of just rolling out of bed and allowing every little thing to be like a signal for a day that's not going to go so good. And
Gotcha.
yeah, I'm not sure if I really got the answer to your question for that one, but
No, that's what you said is still necessary. Like absolutely, like it does make a difference if we're starting the day with some intentionality and self-focus, some self-awareness versus just rolling out of bed and just kind of rolling with the punches all day.
mhm.
So I think that's absolutely perfect. I wasn't sure if there was like, you know, when I think environment, I'm thinking the home and the community and the people around me, and like, but a lot of that is in fact like just rolling with the punches of the day, and like how do I navigate my day and the people around me and stuff like that by using the
Sure.
breath.
Another thing that I often highlight for individuals, or I'll have individuals coming back to me saying things like, and especially I work with a lot of people who work with other people. So that's
Mm,
they're a therapist or a coach or a mother, a sister, brother. If you have a family, we all show up for other people in some way. And what
yeah.
I'll often hear from people and what I experienced when I started doing a lot of breath work was that suddenly other people's issues were not um, attaching themselves to us,
Mm,
like they were not affecting us. We're still able to show up for them
yeah.
and even hold presence in a deeper way because they
Mhm.
were not affecting us as much. Um, and I think one reason for that is that for those listeners who understand that we have an energy body, that we are we're electrical beings. We have this energetic aura around us. When we breathe, deeply, and specifically this form of breathing that we do that's called transformational breath work, it's a circular connected pattern. That breath particularly really elevates the energy body, the frequency of the body. So when we're near other individuals, we actually have the power to elevate their energy just by
Mm.
how our energy is flowing. Um, so that really is relevant in talking about how you affect your family in your home, or again, how you might affect your clients. We do this work for others as much as we do it for ourselves. We all know that if
Yeah.
somebody's having a
Yeah.
bad day, or they're being grumpy, and maybe they're not even sharing what it is they're feeling, but you can just feel it by being around them.
Yeah.
It's the same in the opposing context, which is if you're feeling really great and open and expansive, that's going to rub off on those around you.
It seems multidimensional, this whole breath thing, right? Like we're talking about the physical, the organ benefits and the hormone benefits, and there's some, seems like it helps with the central nervous system and working through fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and re-regulating our central nervous system, but also energetically, strengthening us and bolstering us. I think that in there I see a metaphor also in our breath. Then when we can take a deeper breath, we're taking up more space in our body, we're taking up more space in our energy, and taking up more space in our life. So like I like metaphors.
Sure.
So I can see how you said, other people's stuff affects us less, because taking up more space, being more centered and grounded in this being that I'm less affected by this being over here or that being over there, no matter what their state is. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're able to then show up in a more authentic or maybe helpful way to those things that would um, maybe usually knock you off your center and leave you
Yeah.
frantic for trying to figure out what to do now.
Sure, because my nervous system is calm. Now I'm ready. I'm not going to play into any of that, but I can be present with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. So, are there any best practices that someone can start using today that will help them to, keep themselves centered or help navigate a difficult emotion?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, um, and I do have one simple breath I would like to share whenever we are ready to close. But I would just say, first off the bat, that I would check in to notice if you are breathing through your mouth or your nose.
Okay.
There's many reasons why an individual would breathe through their mouth, and there are many reasons why we would like to start to train the body to breathe through the nose.
Okay.
The nose is a filter. It was, designed in a way to
Yeah.
filter external pollution. There's actually antiviral chemicals that are produced when we breathe through the nose. So it's really important for the immune system to be breathing through the nose. And it allows the breath to be slower. So the nose is obviously a smaller hole than the mouth.
Yeah.
And we do some breath practices through the mouth because we're trying to flood the system with oxygen. But your everyday common breathing really should be done through the nose, and that will slow down the breath and in turn slow down the reactivity of the nervous system.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Was there anything else that you wanted to share? So breathing through the nose as opposed to the mouth.
Sure, and I would love to just take a few minutes to go through what I call a square breath. It's
Sure.
just super simple,
Yeah.
and And it is, um, I would say, can be used to relax if you're feeling kind of hyperactive. Um, but it could also just bring some clarity and focus. Not necessarily relax, like go to sleep.
Mhm.
But if you are maybe you're taking a test or have an interview or something like that. Um, so it's just 4 counts of inhale and hold for 4 counts and a 4 count exhale and then hold. So I'll just count us through that if we want to try that for
Yeah,
a couple
please.
rounds. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll start by exhaling, and then we're going to inhale 3, 2, 1, hold 3, 2, 1. Exhale 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. Inhale 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. Exhale 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. Inhale 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. Exhale 3, 2, 1. And that's it. We're just going moving in a square. And that's super simple. I love that one because we can teach it to our kids.
Yeah.
There's not complexity.
I know that, like, for people with anxiety, a lot of counselors and stuff like that will promote that breath to help work through the anxiety moment.
Mhm.
Um, so awesome. I have a question because for me personally, like, I tend to exhale more than I inhale, and I'm certain that there's someone out there with the opposite being true for them. So, like, what does that mean? Does that mean anything? How does that affect us? And how can we balance that out?
Sure. Well, this square breath is a very good tool for becoming aware of that, right?
Hmm.
Because if you breathe very unevenly, you start to try to do this even inhale and even exhale, you're going to automatically notice, wow, I have a whole lot of exhale left, or I'm used to taking in way more inhale than that. Um, I would say that if it's just slightly off, that it's, not anything to be super concerned with. Um, the Again, if we want to start talking about in metaphors, our inhale represents what's coming towards us in life and the fresh life that we're bringing in. So I would say, if anything, it's going to be a little bit more ideal to be inhaling slightly more than you would be exhaling. Um, but it's all related to the patterns of muscular intention that we hold in our bodies, from having reacted to our life for however long you've been alive,
Yeah.
right? Uh,
Yeah.
so the more you become aware of your breath and the little nuances like that, and also not, mm, making that into something that needs to be fixed, right? We all
Yeah.
have our own unique breath pattern, and we always will. So that's important, I think.
I
Yeah.
think that is important. Yeah, thank you for saying that because it's true. We don't always need to get fixed. But also, there's something that I can learn in that. You know, you were talking about the metaphor of like the new things coming in and the exhale. Like for some reason, for years now, I've equated the breath with giving and receiving. Like when I talk about giving and receiving, and it's like, oh, so I'm exhaling, I'm giving, 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 and wait. Let me receive real quick so that I can
Right.
catch back up. Yeah, so I think that's my probably my personal metaphor. But also, um, like you said, knowing your history and how that has shaped how you breathe. Um, you know, freeze response is probably my primary out of the fight, flight, freeze fawn. And also like holding your breath, waiting for that thing, right? Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Yeah. So, working through that. And so it sounds like that this could be really helpful to healing some of the historical patterns and perhaps opening up to, for me anyway, the new next, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Um, Anything else that you want to share with us about this dynamic experience of breath and breathing and how it can be transformational for people?
Mm, I would just like to encourage anyone who might be listening to this and you just feel intrigued to follow that feeling, and that there really is something that benefits everyone when you get into your breath. As I said before, anyone that breathes can benefit from a deeper awareness, and the the breath is truly, truly integrative. So, even if you're not really sure what you could be working on, or you don't have a specific issue that you're trying to solve or anything like that, if you're feeling intrigued at all, I would follow the call to dive deeper and see what comes up for you. I really truly believe that the breath has its own wisdom, almost as if it's its own entity as our life force. And what it shows you can be drastically different between individuals. And it's even as a breath worker, having worked with so many people, it still remains just this powerful mystery of what it uncovers for people.
It's really nice to, like, I think one of the least experienced emotions that we can have is awe. And what I'm noticing in this conversation is how much in awe we are of the idea of breath and how it can facilitate these processes for us and nurture us in some kind of way and nourish us, obviously, with oxygen and all that good stuff. So it's really interesting, and yeah, I just want to like take note of the awe for a second because I like to absorb that stuff in. Um, Shenee, like I know that you travel all over the place teaching breath work and doing these magnificent retreats and experiences. I want to tell people how to reach you. So could you share some of your contact information, like your website and social media, so they can follow you and find
Yeah,
out more from you?
absolutely. Thank you for asking. My website is www.inspirationactivation.life. And you'll find me on Instagram as Shenee Alexa and Inspiration Activation, and on Facebook, Shenee Alexa Booth and Inspiration Activation. Um, I just returned from Costa Rica. We just did a week-long retreat there, and I'm back in the States now. And one thing I'll be focusing on for this next season is doing personal retreats. So individuals who might want to either personally or with a small group, maybe in their home or renting an Airbnb space, and just having the opportunity to dive really deep into this work and have a space to integrate. So not a little bit in contrast of going to a class or an appointment and then walking back out the door and driving
Yeah,
back into your life. And yeah.
a bit more intimate, a bit more intense, perhaps, but just yeah, it sounds really great. And you
And
also work with people one-on-one,
yes,
virtually and in person?
yes, virtually and in person, on at locations across the river in Illinois and in the St. Louis area.
Okay,
And I did want
awesome.
to say that I think it was by synchronistic that you brought up this concept of awe,
Yeah.
um, because that state is definitely something that I feel like the breath activates in people. And
Mm,
when I think about the state of awe, it's very childlike,
mhm.
and it's very eye-opening, and it reminds me of the state of inspiration,
Yeah.
which I just stated my business name is Inspiration Activation. And for those of you who don't know, the root word of inspiration, inspire, actually means to inhale.
Yeah.
That state of inspiring, of
Yeah.
inhaling, is actually what my work is all about activating. So that state of awe, you nailed it, right?
Yeah. Awe seems like there's this bounty of things that can be filed under awe, like magic and beauty and like humbleness and preciousness and like all the things that you mentioned as well. It's one of those umbrella states that just brings so much magnificence. And I love how you said that about the breath and to inhale, inspire, and also in spirit is the way some people believe, inspiration is to be in spirit or inspired by spirit. And um in Chinese medicine, because you know me from that world, in Chinese medicine, it's said that breath is spirit.
Mhm.
So when we inhale, we're inhaling this spiritual element. And I don't think that we usually think about that, but like, what if the great connector of the world is just the breath that we breathe? I think that we've talked about this a long time ago, like breathing air. I'm breathing air from someone in Japan right now, you
Yes,
know.
absolutely.
So it's a great connector when we think about it that way.
Yeah, I fully, fully believe that not only are we breathing one another's breath, but we're exchanging that with every other living thing on the planet.
Mm, yeah, I'm exchanging breath with a wombat right now.
Love it.
Let's be intentional about that. Wait, yeah. Thank you so much, Shenee. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise on transformational breath work. And we'll drop all Shenee's links in the comments section. So check it out, follow her, and beautiful, beautiful things you're sharing. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Michelle. It was a pleasure to be here today.